The jig is up, folks. More and more people are beginning to catch on to where all of this cognitive distortion thinking has been coming from. People, our young adults particularly, have been getting trained in our universities to think with unhealthy cognitive distortions for years. And this is just another reason why Donald Trump is going to win in a landslide in this 2020 election. Welcome to Americana X Newswatch. I'm Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. Today, what are we talking about? This is a pretty big subject. I'm going to try to run through it really fast, so this isn't a super long video. But basically what we're talking about is how our universities in America, willingly or unwillingly, wittingly or unwittingly, have been training the next generation of adults to think with cognitive distortions, which has been basically making our country crazier, more insane, have a lot more anxiety and higher levels of depression. And it's showing up now more and more obviously in our American culture. And there is a pushback happening right now. If you're new to the show, Newswatch, the news commentary show, kind of a breath of fresh air in your week as you're kind of going through your day. This show is for conservatives that care about what's going on behind the sensationalized headlines. And today, episode's no exception. We're talking about what's going on behind the scenes of everything you're hearing from the media. If you're enjoying this content, consider liking, commenting, subscribing. Also, share this video out to your friends so that we can continue to promote conservative values to make America a greater place. Today, we are talking about universities and how they are now creating a generation of insane young liberals. It's literally a factory pumping out insane liberals out into our greater body politic. And this is another reason for why Donald Trump is going to win this election. So I was watching this episode of Brett Weinstein's Dark Horse podcast. This came out a couple of weeks ago, but it's something that's been sticking with me, and it's something I wanted to get back to. I felt like this is a great opportunity because we can really kind of highlight how Donald Trump is winning right now and some of the things that have led up to why Donald Trump is winning in 2020. So in this episode, Brett Weinstein is interviewing a guy named Greg Lukianoff. Now, Greg Lukianoff, he's an author of several books, but one of his seminal offerings is this book called The Coddling of the American Mind. He wrote that book with Jonathan Haidt. I did some other episodes in the past, maybe an episode of Zeitgeist on it. At any rate, I'm not going to get deep into that book, but it's a great book to go back and check out if you get a chance. So throughout this interview, there was a lot of points that they hit, but there was one thing I felt was particularly important and pertinent for right now. They were talking about how liberal universities have been literally training college students to have unhealthy, distorted thinking. And how did they identify this? Greg Lukianoff in particular, he identified this because he himself benefited from CBT training. CBT stands for Cognitive Behavioral Therapy training. This helped him when he was going through a deep depression himself. And in essence, CBT helps you identify unhealthy patterns. Unhealthy cognitive behavior helps you break those bad habits so that you experience less anxiety and depression. It's a drug-free way of getting more psychologically healthy. Okay, so what was he getting at when he said that colleges are literally training our young people to have cognitive distortion? And that's what I'm going to cover here. I'm just going to kind of do a quick recap of their conversation here, and then I'm going to tie that back to our original title. Okay. So I guess I'll just drop this in right now. I did quickly make a connection when I was listening to these guys have this discussion between the psychologically unhealthy liberal mindset that we're experiencing now, and how this is turning off more and more Americans, American voters, whether you're on the right or the left. If you're seeing the byproduct of poor, unhealthy cognitive psychology, then you are going to be turned off. If you are seeing the effects of it, you will be turned off. And this is both, I mean, of course, conservatives are going to see it. They're going to identify it. They're going to vote for Donald Trump. That's a cinch. But what we're seeing now is more and more what you'd say is like center left people are seeing it. It's becoming obvious to them. And what are some of the effects, right? What are some of the most recent ways we're seeing this cognitive distortion show up in the actions of our young adults? Here's 3 right here. I just made a couple of quick notes. I'm sure you'll know what I'm talking about when I say this. One is our young people are more angry as they become protesters, and then their protesting devolves into some form of crime or violence or both. You've seen that. Another one, young people now championing causes driven by neo-Marxist philosophy. This is directly from our universities. Joining groups like Antifa and BLM. This is all neo-Marxist. What other ways are we seeing this negative way of thinking show up? Generally being short-tempered people that scream other people down in public. If they disagree with them, they just have a simple disagreement. This is coming from people that are blowing things way out of proportion. They're overgeneralizing. They're making a mountain out of a molehill. There's all sorts of cognitive distortions that are going on that are making people act out in this way. What we may be experiencing as madness in the people around us, and as we go out and interact with people in our culture, or as we just watch the news or watch social media as the feeds flow in and we see people rioting and destroying cities and arson of our courthouses, et cetera, et cetera. Whether that's madness, anger, rage, or in some cases just sort of like a general ill-tempered negativity, all of this, we have to remember, it has an origin. This just didn't pop up out of nowhere. These people, as crazy as it may sound, have been trained to think this way. And this is the point that Greg Lukianoff is making. This guy researches this stuff. His whole life is about researching this. I'm going to share with you now a few of my notes from Greg Lukianoff speaking with Brett Weinstein. Okay, so this should provide us with some direct correlation between where we're at right now, what we're seeing with all this activity, and Trump basically winning in a landslide here on November 3rd. Or I guess I should say soon after November 3rd, because there's going to be, a bunch of ballots pouring in, the mail-in ballots. It'll take them a week to count. Honestly, I think the landslide's going to be established. I think it'll be a moot point, actually, the whole, all this debacle of, mail-in voting and da-da-da-da-da, kerfuffle and panic and madness. I think it's just going to be he won decidedly, okay? At any rate, moving on. Greg Lukianoff, he's the one that really was kind of driving the point home about CBT, cognitive behavioral therapy, and how lessons from identifying things like catastrophizing thinking and encouraging people to have or just binary things. So catastrophizing, overgeneralizing, and binary thinking. And the point that he's making here in this interview is that it's the universities that have actually been encouraging young adults to think with these types of really unhealthy cognitive ways of thinking, okay? So he identified overgeneralization as being maybe the largest cognitive distortion that our next generation is really struggling with right now. Literally, young adults being trained to think in unhealthy ways by our universities, our education systems. How sick and sad is that? Look, I'm just going to make a quick input here. It's time to stop the liberal madness. Okay, folks? it is time to put a lid on the liberal madness. We've been hearing a lot about lids lately. Thought it'd be appropriate to put it there. This is exactly what most of the liberal ideology comes down to. What we're seeing kind of like in the liberal universities, there's a cascade effect. And as I mentioned before, it kind of starts in the liberal world and it kind of spins out into the greater body politic. In fact, the entire platform of social justice, which is what's being pumped into these universities and out of these universities and into our corporations now, it relies on teaching people distorted ways of thinking, literally training people to live a life of anxiety and depression as they go from college into their adult life, into their careers. And of course, what's downstream from that, right? People be making bad choices. They will pick partners out of codependence. They will get hooked on some sort of drug or get addicted to things, maybe alcohol, maybe some sort of other substance abuse. It's very sad. And the fact that we have a whole world promoting and pushing this really unhealthy cognitive behavior, it's very sad. Just a quick side note here. This is kind of, I guess you'd say, like a warning label of sorts. If you expose yourself as a conservative to people that think this way, people that have been trained to operate with high levels of anxiety and depression as a result of distorted thinking, then, you yourself will be affected. And with prolonged exposure to these people, you will also suffer from heightened levels of anxiety and depression yourself. So you got to protect yourself. Stand guard at the door of your own mind. And if you're a responsible person that cares about the culture you live in and cares about America, vote Donald Trump, because he's the only bulwark against this kind of nonsense. It's going to get turned up to 11 if he's voted out of office and they install Biden. I'm not worried, though. At any rate, back in the 80s, the worst we could say about universities preparing young adults for life is that they were promoting secular thinking, atheist thinking, sort of like a hedonistic lifestyle. It's like, let's drink, let's party, university life. That was a very big thing, back in the day, right? That was maybe the worst we could say. We got some sororities and fraternities that are promoting kind of like a hedonistic atheist life, right? What do we see now? The worst we could say about what our universities are doing is preparing our young adults for a lifetime of pathologically distorted ways of thinking. It's very sad. I'm going to paraphrase something that Brett Weinstein said in this podcast, Dark Horse podcast interview. He said, "What is being threatened right now is the mind's basic ability to cope. This sabotaging of our universities is making our next generation of young adults weaker and more volatile." Now that, I think, is really getting at the heart of what's going on right now. It's very sad that our universities have devolved to this level, but I think he is right on point. The sabotaging of our universities, leading us to turn out young adults that are weaker and more volatile. But I do think there is a silver lining, you guys. I think there is, the cloud does have a silver lining. The general populace is catching on, and they're getting fed up with these liberals tearing down the foundations of our great nation with psychologically unhealthy ways of pushing this nonsense thinking. When we talk about things like overgeneralizing and catastrophizing, that is their tools. That is how they get their young people to do their bidding. And this is what we're seeing. People are voting for Donald Trump because he represents a pushback against all of the madness that is now coming from the left. You know, sometimes I'll hear people that are like center left talk about it like they'll shrug and they'll say, well, I don't want to vote for Biden. I don't want to vote for Trump either. Both sides are just bad. I'm just going to sulk and live in melancholy, right? I think that's really sad to watch because there is clearly a better choice. In fact, these two guys that are center-left guys in their conversation, they get to the heart of it. They say, our liberal universities, run 99% by liberals, have been promoting cognitive, distorted ways of thinking that is creating more anxiety and depression in our young people. They identify it. This isn't like a secret. So who are you going to vote for? The party that represents getting people to spin out negativity? Or are you going to vote for the party as imperfect as all things considered, as imperfect as they all are? Yeah, you're going to vote for the one that is a bulwark against the negativity. You're going to vote for the one that's promoting positivity. The one that their rallies feel more like parties than they do rallies. Look, Trump is not a perfect vessel. I will agree with these guys on that. But he is calling out the mechanisms in our culture that are making up the destructive forces attempting to dismantle our wonderful country. Come on, you guys. I honestly think these guys have become conservatives. They just don't know it. Or maybe they don't want to admit because they really badly want the answer to come from some liberal at some point in time. I guess there is something to be said for people getting really stuck in wanting the answer to come from one side. It's like they really need that label of being liberal. Why? What are you guys gaining now from calling yourselves liberals? I don't know. I think it's just a carryover of when they were young, they called themselves a liberal and they felt really good about it. They don't want to let it go. But it certainly is dumb from my perspective, for all the intelligence these guys have. Point is this, bringing it all home, there is a silent majority that is beginning to push back against all this wokeness, political correctness, and they are starting to vote. In fact, they're voting right now, this week. It's happening right now. Donald Trump already is leading in many, many states, most states, in mail-in ballots. Oops. Liberals, they didn't see that coming. They thought, oh, we'll do the mail-in ballot. That'll help us win. Maybe not. Maybe Donald Trump's just going to sweep there too. The long-term fix is that the majority of people, and by the way, we are the majority, okay? The good people of the world that have been just kind of going along to get along, you know? I'm getting a lot of pressure from people at work. There's these really loud minority of people, but I can cool it. I can chill. I can be somewhat politically correct or go along with the political correct narrative. I can go sit in on the BLM classes at work. No, we need to stop that nonsense. We need to put a stop to these people pushing and promoting a woke agenda, neo-Marxist philosophies into every corner of the body politic. We need to knock it out. Good people are going to have to start standing up and saying something. You're going to have to start making things uncomfortable, folks. That is the time that we live in. You know, you could start by getting yourself the audiobook of Coddling of the American Mind. Listen through it. It'll give you some discussion points. That book was written by liberals, but it's identifying how we got here. Gets deep into the details of a lot of these cognitive distortions. You know, they have some really clever ways of describing it. If you can get there with a liberal that is somewhere on the spectrum of moderate to extreme, you may be able to start winning people over to common sense, positivity, an escape from spinning out in anxiety and depression all the time. Tell your friends, tell your family, stand up to the woke bullies in your workplace. The majority of the people are not going along with the political correctness run amok in our culture. It's damaging the younger generations with distorted thinking. Most people do not go along with the left arrangement that is based on distortions, overgeneralizing, and binary thinking. It's time to be brave enough to stand up to the people and tell them you're not buying what the liberals are peddling. And you're not going to be silent about it anymore. In fact, you're going to rock the boat. This week, we're going to rock the vote. After that, we're going to rock the boat. All right, thanks for tuning in to another episode of Americana X Newswatch. I'm Greg D, coming to you live from Los Angeles, California. Let me know what you think in the comment section below. Do you agree with what I'm saying here? Do you agree with Brett Weinstein and Greg Lukianoff and some of the points they were making about how the university is training our young people to think with cognitive distortions? Let me know what you think. Until next time, have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on the next episode of Newswatch.